Hi everyone.
These are true tales of my African adventures. May this inspire you, deter you, caution you, and above all, entertain you.
Well, it's been some time since I've been in India. India is one of my favorite spots, by the way. It's not unlike South Africa in that there's so much wildlife and the jungles are really beautiful. And the trees too are absolutely magnificent. And the snakes here are huge. They really are big. King cobras, and even the common rat snake, a non-venomous snake, can grow to 13 feet or more. Brilliant. The jungles are full of tigers, or used to be. These days there are still tigers in some of the areas of India. And after my experience with lions in the bush, I figured I really did not want to face a tiger in India. So whenever we approach a very dense jungle, a reserve, my first question is, are there tigers here? A very funny thing actually happened where a South African was running to raise money for a noble cause, and he was running in India from one side to the other. I think it was north to south, and they reached a large fence, and on the other side there was just nothing. It was a very busy place, lots of traffic, people, villages, and then suddenly a fence and nothing on the other side. So they just figured they'd climb over the fence and continue running on the other side of the fence into the jungle. So they did, and they ran through the jungle quite a distance, and then came to a fence on the other side, climbed over the fence. When they climbed over the fence, there was a sign saying, "Keep out, beware, tiger reserve." Well, if that was me, I think, I don't know what I would have done, but they certainly found it quite amusing. Anyway, so I'll tell you a tiger story, because lots of people keep tigers in South Africa. I was never really keen on exotic animals in Africa. I was quite busily occupied with all the indigenous ones. So there were nonetheless many people keeping tigers there. So what happened is I got used to being asked to build enclosures in zoos and animal parks because I had the talent to do that. So we had built one beautiful large pond on a hillock, and below the hillock was there was a waterfall falling into a pond, and that pond ran into a river, and the tigers very much used to like lying in the pond and playing in the river. It was a beautiful enclosure, but the pair of tigers in there were very unusual. One of them was a huge, I mean huge male with massive forearms. They dwarfed a human's forearms. They rivaled a large leg. Incredible, and he was mean, and he injured the female a few times. They eventually took him out, and one day one of the attendants went into the area where they trap the tigers if they want to work in the enclosure. He went up to the bars, and this tiger went for him up on its hind legs with a deafening roar and hit the bars at full speed, and they rattled and shook, and he was so frightened by this that he actually said he is not going back in there. He was one of the attendants. He said, "I am not going back in there." Such was the ferocity of this tiger. And I don't know if any of you know Jim Corbett, but Jim Corbett, if you haven't read any of Jim Corbett's books about the tigers, the man-eating tigers and leopards of India, which he hunted down, hardly a man like Jim Corbett has ever walked this earth. Read his books, you will absolutely love them. And he dealt with man-eating tigers in a manner that is unique to humans, to humankind. Anyway, we had a close shave with a tiger in South Africa. One of the enclosures we were asked to build a dam in for the tigers was down in Mpumalanga, which is the old Eastern Transvaal. And so we had to build this dam. Well, we went down, and I spent a few days there, got the men started, mapped out the little dam. They dug the dam, got all the materials in, and they began their work. I, of course, couldn't stay, not of course, but I couldn't stay there all the time because I had things to do also in other parts of the country. So I left them alone for a few days before I came back to do an inspection. What happened was unbelievable. The tiger's sleeping quarters were not that robust, and they were beautifully disguised with reeds and some timber. And one of the tigers one day actually broke free of this enclosure, their sleeping quarters that they could be trapped in if work needed to be done. So what happened is the tiger started stalking them. Now I know of one lady who was killed in Zimbabwe. She went into a lion enclosure. I don't know what she was doing there, if she was a veterinary practitioner or what she was doing there. I cannot remember, this is so many years ago. Went into the enclosure, and somebody was supposed to shut the lion into the sleeping quarters and lock the gate, and he hadn't locked the gate. And the lion came out and killed the unfortunate lady. This has happened more than once. I was asked to go and inspect a tiger enclosure in the Johannesburg Zoo for a possible upgrade of their water environment. And I asked if they had shut the gate. I said, have they locked the gate? I said, will you go and check, please? They went and checked. They came back. They said it's shut and it's locked. I then went in, but I couldn't help looking over my shoulder. It's just that I know so much about zoos and snake parks and what goes on there, and things are forever escaping. Like even in America, at one famous zoo there, two teenagers or in their 20s, I'm not sure, they were throwing things at a tiger, antagonizing it, and eventually the tiger, it was I think close to closing time, leapt the wall. It was a very high wall, managed to cling onto the top of the wall, got out, hunted these two youngsters down and savagely and brutally killed one of them. But it doesn't take much for a tiger to kill you. Really, they could decapitate you with one clout. Also a South African filmmaker who went with a group of people to rescue a tiger and other animals from a zoo in Angola during the war, was killed by a tiger there that had escaped when they were trying to rescue it. Just killed him. Terrible thing. Tigers are so big, so strong, and so dangerous. Anyway, back to our tiger story. So the staff who had become nonchalant about working in the tiger enclosure were unaware that this tiger had now escaped, and it was busy stalking them. And the grass was only about 1.5 feet high, but such is the exquisite camouflage of a tiger that they did not see it moving inch by inch towards them. Now their skins are so beautiful, and those stripes, they can blend into a bamboo thicket. It's not for beauty, it's for camouflage, as you know. And this camouflage had worked beautifully, and there was I would guess about 30 meters, 300 feet from the sleeping enclosure where they were supposed to be locked up to where the men were working. One of the men looked up, he told me afterwards, he says he looked up, he thought he saw something move, and he looked and he looked and he looked, and all he saw was grass, winter grass. And he thought he saw something move again, and he looked up and he stared right into the eyes of the tiger. He saw it. And now it had moved about 50% of the distance between the enclosure and where they were working. I mean, at this point, the tiger could have launched an attack. It was close enough. He screamed an alarm at the others, and in unison, they got in the vehicle. I told them, I said, keep the vehicle inside right next to the dam so that if anything happens, you can get in. Because if something escaped and the vehicle wasn't there, they would have no chance whatsoever. They got into that vehicle in unison, slammed the door shut and locked it. And the tiger stood up looking very dejected. They told me it just stood there with its head slightly down, staring at them for a long while. I guess the tiger was like really upset that his fun for the day had been spoilt, and to boot a fresh meal. It is so incredibly dangerous working in these enclosures. Anyway, I wasn't there. One of the first times in my life that an engagement I was involved in and where an attack was supposed to happen, and I was not the subject of the attack, for a change.